So, historically speaking, this number has changed some decades later. How can the death toll increase from 13 to 14 26 years later? That makes no sense. Well, flash forward to February 16th, 2025.
Hey, friends, welcome to the podcast. If you have watched our past couple podcasts, we sure are wearing the same clothes because
I know behind the scenes, most people batch record and release them
I,
incrementally.
I know. Just like life does, it's like, okay, we if we're gonna do it, we gotta do it right now. Let's do it.
Right
Let's
now,
do it. We're in
the
the mood to
moment.
do it. Let's go. We love hanging out with you guys. If you are new, welcome, welcome, welcome. We're so glad that you're here. If you are an old friend of ours,
Hi.
big hugs. We've missed you. If you are just stumbling on our podcast, please do all the YouTube things like, comment, subscribe if you would please do so. We're glad you're here. I hope you are all doing well. And Kimberly, what's next on the docket, my dear?
Well, with all the things going on in the world, just blanket all the things, especially in the true crime world. Um, this is a really good time to talk about something that not many people are talking about. For those of you who are oof, under 30, I don't know how I'm going to phrase that. I don't know if I'm going to edit that out. But for the youngins that may not have been alive or have a recollection of the Columbine Massacre, it's coming up on its 26th anniversary this month, which feels crazy. Um, and along with it, there's been a change in the actual casualty toll. We are now at 14 lives lost from the original 13. And if that makes no sense to you 26 years later, we're going to tell you how and we're going to tell you why. But first, Columbine, for me, just shortly before 9/11, because this happened in 1999, this was sort of a Kennedy moment for me. I will remember where I was when the Columbine High School massacre happened forever.
Yeah.
Do you know where you were when Columbine happened?
Yeah, I remember I was actually at home and I remember being totally confused because I was like, who brings a gun to school?
Yeah.
Like, who
It
does that?
it unfortunately, the one thing, maybe there's more than this, but one of the few major dents that the millennial generation is going to leave on the world is sort of the era of school shootings.
Yeah.
This was like the first, and it's still considered one of, if not the most horrific. But it was like the first, and it was televised.
It's so bad.
No, I mean, you know what I mean when I say televised. Like it was
Yeah, I
happening
know.
in real time on television,
Yeah.
and we could see the images. It's like, again, another 9/11 reference, the person jumping from the tower, kids jumping out of windows and dangling to get out of the school from the, it's like I will never be able to unsee that.
Yeah.
But just like 9/11, I remember where I was when Columbine happened, and this high school massacre really did sort of kick off this generation of school shootings. It's had a lasting impact on the survivors, and the increase in school shootings not necessarily because of Columbine, but it really did galvanize people. And life has a before Columbine and an after, even for those of us that weren't there. And the ripple effects of this landmark tragedy continue to sort of undulate. So if you are unfamiliar or too young to know about or remember Columbine, very quick recap. April 20th, 1999, two students at Columbine High School in Colorado, Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris, they opened fire and intended to set off bombs. Luckily, that didn't go off inside of Columbine High School. And until recently, the outcome was 13 lives lost with 20 injured. and then another 3 injured on the escape from the school. So I assume that one of those might have been the student in the window. It was the deadliest mass school shooting at a K through 12 in the US until 2012, and it is still considered the most darkly influential school shooting in modern history. It remains the deadliest mass shooting in the state of Colorado and has grimly inspired so many school shooters in its aftermath. It was planned with a lot of detail and intention, has been covered in endless documentaries, Michael Moore coverage. It opened Pandora's box for future attacks, almost like a blueprint. And it really was the first time we saw this happening on television. But how can the death toll increase from 13 to 14 26 years later? That makes no sense. Well, flash forward to February 16th, 2025. A 43-year-old woman named Anne Marie Hochhalter passed away. She was paralyzed from the waist down when she was shot in the chest and back in Columbine High School. And she died on February 16th from a sepsis infection. She was discovered during a welfare check at her Westminster, Colorado home. And the 13-page autopsy report from the medical examiner in Jefferson County says that her death is a homicide. And that is because her sepsis was the result of, quote, and I'm going to quote here, complications of paraplegia due to 2 gunshot wounds as a significant contributing factor.
That is wild.
The forensic pathologist, Dr. Dawn Holmes, wrote that in her report, classified her death as a homicide, and due to the role that her paralysis played in her death, which otherwise might not have happened, the investigation was transferred to the office that also reviewed the deaths in the school shooting. And since it was a direct result of the injury inflicted upon her in that school shooting, succumbing to those complications would technically mean that her life ended as a direct result with no control of her own due to the actions of both shooters, who chose to end their lives before being apprehended, by the way, but we're not talking about them. So, historically speaking, this number has changed some decades later. And I would like to tell you all in my research what I found out about Anne. She did her best to have an independent life. She was confined in a wheelchair. She was a gun violence advocate. And her brother Nathan described her as a gift of 26 more years on earth with her loved ones, which were challenging, but she got very close with the parents of one of the other victims who lost her life, Lauren Townsend. And they became very close in the years afterwards, which is understandable. But they called her a fighter, that she struggled, especially with mental health issues and depression, but she would always get back up, so to speak. She was her own best advocate. And she was a very big voice for the disability community. She advocated about supplemental Social Security payments for people with disabilities, gun violence activism, and she was vehemently opposed to continuing to publicize the names of the shooters, which was part of the no notoriety movement, I think, saying basically that social media was profiting from violent content. She also had to endure the loss of her mother 6 months after the massacre. Carla June Hochhalter, and I remember this, took her own life with a gun. And then Anne had to grapple with the difficulty in understanding that, since it's the same weapon that changed her life forever. And I can't imagine dealing with that while trying to recover from being directly impacted by that and the trauma and the pain. I can't even imagine the suffering that her mother was going through before she made that decision. She did go back to school for her senior year. She went to college. She did have a hard time initially. She went back home to be near her family. She struggled a lot with the after effects of what happened to her, but she ended up seeing, brighter days after that, becoming more independent, relying on her faith. She bought her own house. She learned how to drive. She went back to college. She got a job. She was counseling people. She was rescuing dogs. It seemed, after reading about her, that her coping mechanisms, they fluctuated, but she was very much so on a path that would have maybe given her a very full life, and being able to sort of fill the hole for another victim's family. Not that it could ever be filled, but finding that sense of togetherness and coping together was apparently very, very therapeutic for her and very cathartic for everybody. And we're revisiting this because not only is this kind of an interesting asterisk, like I never thought about the fact that a statistic like this could change, and that
Yeah.
some many years later that someone's passing could, it never even dawned on me, oh, retroactively that could count as, an unfortunate addition to this tragedy, and that can't be understated. But she did, before she passed, address one of the shooter's parents. I don't remember which one. I know one published a memoir and did a documentary. I did watch the documentary. It was very tasteful. um, I very much enjoyed watching. Not enjoyed, but I was not turned off by it. It was, her son did what he did. Um,
Yeah.
but in 2016, Anne wrote on Facebook, quoting the very genuine personal letter that these parents sent to her after the massacre. She said she was grateful that they chose to donate all the proceeds from that memoir to supporting mental health awareness. And her post said, just as I wouldn't want to be judged by the sins of my family members, I hold you in that same regard. It's been a rough road for me with many medical issues because of my spinal cord injury and intense nerve pain, but I choose not to be bitter towards you. A good friend once told me bitterness is like swallowing poison pills and expecting the other person to die. It only harms yourself. I have forgiven you and only wish you the best. Hindsight is truly 2020, and I am sure you have agonized over what you could have done differently. I know because I do the same thing with trying to think of ways I could have prevented my mother's death. I have no ill will towards you. And 2 years ago, on the anniversary of the Columbine tragedy, she wrote, my wounds here were the worst ones the doctor saw that day. And a few months later, one of them told me that when I get older, I have to be prepared for it to catch up to me. And I am very sad to see that it caught up to her. And I want to send her friends and family and loved ones immensely deep condolences. Um, I'm getting a little choked up.
Yeah.
Um, at least 2 more Columbine students would go on to take their own lives in the years that followed. And many students and teachers will be affected with PTSD. And I'd like to name those 2 people. Greg Barnes, he was 17 and witnessed a friend's shooting in the massacre. He died a year later, self-inflicted. Another survivor, Austin Eubanks, was injured during the shooting and became heavily medicated and developed an opioid addiction. He did overcome it, and he spoke a lot publicly, but he did accidentally overdose in 2019. So those 2 count for me. I'm going to add them unofficially. But the others that were lost at Columbine were William Sanders, Cassie Bernal, Steve Kernow, Corey DePuter, Kelly Fleming, Matt Kechter, Daniel Mauser, Daniel Rohrbar, Rachel Scott, Isaiah Scholes, John Tomlin, Kyle Velasquez, Greg Barnes, Austin Eubanks, and Anne Hochhalter. So it's a grim anniversary, and it's very sad that this came up in my news feed, my literal news feed, not like a Facebook news feed. But I thought it was incredibly interesting, and then it was incredibly sad, and I thought more people should know about Anne Hochhalter.
You don't think about being time wise so far removed from a tragedy like that, but someone can still be affected in that manner,
Yeah,
and kind of add to that unfortunate number of people who have lost their lives. And
yeah,
um, I remember hearing that the parents of those 2 students were horrified. Um,
Yeah. Um, it it's very different than I would say maybe the oh gosh, landing
oh,
in my brain.
Crumbly.
Yeah, Ethan Crumbly.
Yeah.
Um, it was subtle compared to what these two people did. They had schematics and like they had like secret like treasure troves of weapon, but the accountability of what, don't you ever go into your children's rooms or don't you ever go through their thing. Outwardly, they weren't necessarily, again, saying, yeah, you know what, I feel like I'm going to go shoot up a school. They were going through moody teenager phases, but like there was also the focus on violent video games and bullying. It just, there is no right or wrong answer that would have prevented anything. If this was mentally where they were, this is where they were. And autopsying it over and over again in a postmortem and going back, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's happened. And there may have been warning signs, there may not have been, but holding the parents accountable in 1999 seemed like publicly and socially like the thing to do. Like, oh my gosh, what, you have no idea what your kids are doing. But at the same time, I know that I was not doing any of this type of thing, but on a very low scale, if I wanted to go to a party and I was going to a sleepover instead, I was pretty good at weaseling my way. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
if you want to get away with something, you're going to get away with it. You're going to do what you need to do to cover your tracks. And the parents seemed very genuinely, just absolutely just destroyed. Not that we want to
It
see
wasn't.
people feel that way, but they seemed very viscerally destroyed. Like, I can't believe my child did this.
Yeah.
You know?
It's definitely not a Crumbly situation or
No,
a Landry
no.
situation. Yeah, I think they were. They seemed like the kind of people, had they known, they. It was a totally different time.
Right. There wasn't the internet age of social media either, where they could have had a paper trail of their inner thoughts and what they
Yeah.
ate that day. It was
Yeah.
literally, if you don't go through your kid's room, I highly doubt that they would leave that stuff like laying around in the open. If you're going to hide something, you're going to hide something.
Right.
That's the whole point. But I felt terrible. I can't remember if it's Dylan or Eric's mom that did the documentary, but it was very tasteful. And it was a reminder that she too lost something, even though she absolutely does not consider herself a victim. She's a victim. She still doesn't have her child, even though her child did something horrific. It's very different. We got to remember people are
Yeah.
human, you know?
Yeah. I
So,
mean,
yeah.
you have just a totally different. Some, people out there are a part of these true crime stories or whatever story, but they
Yeah.
have a different perspective because it affected them in a different way.
Right.
And
Right.
it's just for example,
It's like
Lori
Rex
Vallow
and
Daybell.
yeah, it's like Rex and Adam. They're
Yeah,
survivors.
their sister is the one that has been convicted of some terrible things to some of their other family members, and
Yeah.
it's just, I mean, when people say ripple effect, I mean that is truly
Yeah.
what it is. So
Yeah, and condemning them for what they did or didn't do, or what Adam did or didn't do for Charles. I mean, you and I think, know a little more intimately that Adam is a decent human being
oh
and can
yeah.
be easily misunderstood if you don't actually know him and have that front row view and that insight to know, okay. It's like I made a joke, if they show his text messages in court, I know I've been texting Adam and it's like important or something, and he's like, okay. And I'm like, Adam. But
I
then when you
know.
talk to him, like literally talk to him, or you're
Oh
in his
yeah.
presence, and you're standing next to him, having a conversation with him, you could say the same thing and he'd be like, oh, like you can hear and see the difference. He's
Yeah.
not just going, uh-huh. But like I was terrified. Like, what if they read his text to Charles in court and he's just like, okay, I'm gonna be like, but I know he doesn't mean it like that. He's just a man of few words via text message.
I
Like,
know.
oh
He's
my
not a
God.
texter. He's not a
It's
texter.
it's
Yeah.
different though. Other people might go, wow, what a cold, callous, just okay. And that's kind of the same thing. Like, people are very quick to judge what people directly involved in a tragedy like this should have been doing, or how they should be acting, or whatever. And I felt terrible for this mom when I was watching the documentary, because it's not as if she was supportive of what her child did. But I think it was enough time had passed because it was recent. It was the last couple of years. I think enough time had passed that it was an appropriate time for her to say, "This is what I have to say to the world." And I thought it was very well done. I can't remember the name of it though. I'll have to find it and put in the
Yeah.
description. But I thought it was important that with all the crazy happening right now and all the things that are current events, that we take a minute to remember that this was the start of an era, not a good one. And it was just as horrifying as every absolutely senseless school shooting and mass shooting that's happened after it. And this deserved its moment. So, in case you missed it, yeah,
Yeah.
be kind to
Well,
people and be empathetic.
mhm.
And gosh,
Yeah.
I'm not going to go on, but just be nice, be kind, be compassionate. Take the time just to know your fellow humans. You never know when a nice interaction with someone can change the course of their entire life.
Yeah. Well, and also if something feels a little off in here or you think something is a little off in here, let's get that checked. Let's
Right.
not
No
put it off
shame in
there.
that game. Take care of yourself. But also, if you
Never,
notice it in
ever, ever.
somebody else, do what you
Yeah.
can to offer them your support, your ear, your time, resources. You can't make someone else do something, but too many people see something and don't say something, or notice something and don't do anything. I've lost at least one friend to self means because nobody thought anything was wrong. And oh, she was just moody and she was just an artist. And it's true that she was very much, like a tortured artist, but we had no idea till she was gone that it was really serious. And we all kind of saw the cracks around the edge, or
Yeah.
the edges, but we all just thought it was edginess and it was just how she was. And she's not here. And
Yeah.
that was really hard. And since that point, and this was literally right after I graduated from high school, so it's been like a couple of years, not like too
Not
many.
that many.
It was like a couple years ago. I am not almost 40. That's not the point. It hits me differently now than it did then, but then it was like, holy crap, why? Like, no one could understand it. And then when you stop and think for a minute, could I have reached out one more time? Hey, how's it going? Or could I have checked on this person or taken something more serious? You'll just absolutely just go crazy thinking about it. But sometimes when you think you have an opportunity to help someone, you should just help them. And if they don't want your help, at least you can sleep at night knowing that you saw something, you said something, you know?
Yeah. Things, happen and people deserve to be remembered. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
these things happen, and I think
Yeah.
bringing some awareness around it and understanding, and also reminding people to seek help if they need it. There are resources out there.
Yeah.
And until next time, guys, we are glad that you guys are here. Thank you for joining us.
Yes.
Again, please do all the YouTubey things. Kimberly, will you show our friends out?
Genuinely and with 100% of my heart and soul, please make good choices because we love you. So we'll see you next time. Bye, guys.